When my son told me I wouldn't be welcome at his house for Christmas, I didn't argue. I smiled, got into my car, and made one phone call. By the time the new year rolled around, their mortgage payments were gone, and that was only the first step in my plan. Justice needed to be restored, and arrogance deserved to be humbled. What I did next? Well, you wouldn't believe it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. I could make my famous roast turkey this year, I said, leaning back into Daniel's leather sofa, with the sage stuffing your mother always swore was better than her grandmother's. The words hung in the warm air, mixing with the scent of Camille's expensive vanilla candles. Daniel shifted beside me, his wedding band glinting in the light of their massive Christmas tree. Something in his posture changed, his shoulders pulled inward like he was bracing for a storm. "Dad, unfortunately, you won't be welcome here for Christmas." The words struck me like a slap. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "What do you mean? Why wouldn't I be welcome?" Daniel couldn't meet my eyes. His gaze stayed locked on the marble coffee table, the same one I'd helped him choose last spring when Camille decided their old furniture wasn't refined enough. "Camille's parents are coming, and they'd prefer you not be here." My hands went cold. "They'd prefer." "It's just easier this way, Dad. You know how her family is about traditions. They have their own way of doing things." His voice grew smaller with each word, as if he was shrinking inside himself. I looked around the room, at the silk curtains I'd paid for when Camille complained about privacy, at the hardwood floors funded by my second mortgage, at the crown molding that maxed out my credit card. Every corner of this house carried my fingerprints, my sacrifice, my love for my son. "Their own way," I repeated slowly. "And what way is that, Daniel?" He flinched. "Dad, please, don't make this harder than it has to be." Through the kitchen archway, I saw Camille's new stand mixer, the top-grade model she'd insisted she needed for her holiday baking phase that fizzled out after 3 weeks. $2,000 of my money sat there, probably used twice since October. Where will I spend Christmas then? My voice was quieter than I intended. Daniel's face tightened. "Maybe you could, I don't know, visit Aunt Carol? Or we could do something the weekend after." The weekend after. Like Christmas was just another appointment that could be moved around for convenience. I stood up, my knees aching after years of carrying this burden alone. "I see. Dad, wait." But I was already moving toward the door, past the family photos where my face grew smaller in each frame, past the coat closet stuffed with Camille's endless jackets. My hand found the doorknob, solid, cold. "Son," I said without turning around, "tell Camille's parents, Feliz Navidad." The December air slapped my face as I walked to my truck. Behind me I heard Daniel call my name once, then the soft click of the door closing. Final, absolute. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, engine off, watching Christmas lights twinkle in windows of houses I'd never be welcome in. My phone buzzed, probably Daniel, ready to smooth things over with empty promises. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the key and drove into the darkness, leaving behind the warm glow of the house I'd bought, but would never belong in. The heater hummed as I navigated the familiar streets toward home. North Crest stretched around me, every corner holding memories of the man I used to be, the man who thought family meant everything, who'd give his last dollar just to see his son smile. That man was a fool. I stopped at a red light on 42nd and Maple, watching a young father load Christmas gifts into his SUV. His children pressed their faces to the glass, breath fogging the windows with excitement. Once upon a time, that had been Daniel and me, before Camille, before I became nothing more than a walking ATM with feelings they found inconvenient. Numbers rolled through my head like a broken slot machine. $20,800 every month for 5 years. I'd stopped trying to make sense of it last spring when I finally totaled the damage, $140,000. More than Linda and I had managed to save for retirement. Gone. Just gone. The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator harder than necessary, the truck's growl matching my mood. "Cedar Avenue," where I'd refinanced our home to cover their down payment. I still remembered the loan officer's face, a flicker of pity I hadn't noticed at the time. "Mr. Ramirez, are you certain you're taking on a lot of risk for someone else's investment?" Someone else's investment? Not my son's future? Not my family's security? Oak Lane, the bank where I'd taken a second mortgage when Daniel lost his job 2 years ago. "Just temporary, Dad, until I get back on my feet." Camille had stood behind him, a $700 purse dangling from her arm, nodding sympathetically while mentally calculating the value of my desperation. It turned out my desperation was worth nothing to them. I pulled into my driveway, the cracked concrete another repair I couldn't afford because every spare dollar vanished into their perfect suburban dream. The porch light flickered, another job I'd been putting off. Inside, the house felt hollow without Linda's laughter, without the warmth of family gatherings that would never happen again. My phone rang as I fumbled with my keys, the sharp tone echoing off the empty walls. Camille's name flashed on the screen. Perfect timing. I'd been waiting 5 years to have this conversation. I answered on the 4th ring, letting her wonder if I'd pick up at all. "Richard," Camille's voice oozed false sweetness, the same tone she used when asking me to cover their water bill or property taxes. "I heard about the little misunderstanding with Daniel." "Misunderstanding?" I leaned against the kitchen counter, still wearing my coat. "I think you made your position clear, Camille. Look, I know this seems harsh, but you have to understand my parents' perspective. They're very traditional. They expect a certain atmosphere during the holidays." "A certain atmosphere," I repeated. "And what kind of atmosphere is that?" A pause. Shopping bags rustled in the background, probably bought with money that should have gone toward their mortgage payment. My mortgage payment, apparently. "Well, they're not used to your kind of cooking, all that spicy Latin food and loud music. And frankly, Richard, they're educated people. They expect conversations about current events, literature, art. You know." The words hit harder than a punch. 8 years of biting my tongue, swallowing insults for Daniel's sake, pretending not to notice the way she looked at me like I was some sort of hired help. "My kind of cooking," I said evenly. "You mean the food you ate every Sunday for 3 years when money was tight? The empanadas you claimed reminded you of your grandmother?" That was different. We were appreciative then, but now, with my parents, "With your parents, you can't have the Latin peasant embarrassing you at your dinner table," I finished for her. The sweetness drained from her voice. "Don't be dramatic, Richard. This isn't about race. It's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Cornell. My mother speaks 4 languages. They summer in the Hamptons. What exactly would you contribute to the dinner conversation? Stories about laying tile?" Heat surged in my chest, but my voice stayed calm. "I built a business from nothing after your husband's grandfather died. I've employed more than 50 people. I've paid more in taxes than your father earned in his best year. Money isn't everything, Richard. Breeding matters. Education matters. And frankly, Laura understood her place better than you understand yours." The line went dead silent. She'd crossed it. The line I didn't even know existed until she stomped across it in her designer heels. "What did you just say about my wife?" "I'm just saying. She knew how to blend in better. She didn't stir the pot. She understood that some spaces weren't meant for her." My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. "Laura had more class in her little finger than your entire family tree will ever have." "Oh, please. She was a house cleaner who got lucky. At least she had the good sense to stay quiet about it." "Camille." My voice dropped to something I barely recognized. "Listen to me very carefully. This conversation is over. We're done pretending to be family. You can't just—" "We're done," I repeated, and ended the call. I set the phone down on the counter with deliberate care, my hands surprisingly steady. Around me, the kitchen felt different, smaller, yet somehow lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from the air itself. I walked to my desk in the corner and pulled out the manila folder I'd been avoiding for months. Inside were bank statements, mortgage papers, and 5 years' worth of automatic transfers that had bled me dry while they lived like royalty. It was time to stop the bleeding. Part 4. The first decision. Canceling the mortgage. The documents spread across my kitchen table like evidence in a courtroom. 5 years of statements, each one showing the same $20,800 transfer on the 15th of every month, money vanishing from my account into theirs. A paper trail of my own misplaced loyalty. I pulled out my calculator and began adding, year 1, $33,600, year 2, another $33,600. By year 3, I'd stopped buying myself new clothes. Year 4, I'd started shopping at discount grocery stores. By this 5th year, lunch was peanut butter sandwiches, day after day. The total, $143,400. That didn't even include the down payment I'd gifted them, or the countless times I'd covered their utility bills when Camille's shopping sprees spiraled out of control. Not the new roof, not the landscaping, not the custom furniture she claimed was essential for their lifestyle. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the numbers until they blurred. This wasn't just money. This was Laura's life insurance, my retirement savings, the college fund we'd started for grandchildren I'd never meet. All of it gone, poured into a house where I wasn't even welcome for Christmas dinner. I reached for my phone and scrolled to the number for my bank. The automated system cheerfully offered me options in English and Spanish. How thoughtful. How accommodating to people like me. Customer service, this is Jennifer. How can I help you today? I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years. Certainly, sir. I'll need your account number and some verification. I rattled off the numbers, listening to her fingers click across the keyboard. She was professional, efficient, and most importantly, didn't ask why a 62-year-old man was canceling payments that were clearly someone else's mortgage. I see the transfer you're referring to, Mr. Ramirez, $2,800 monthly to First Federal. Account ending in 7423. How long have you been making this transfer? 5 years. The words tasted bitter. And you want to cancel it effective immediately? I looked around my kitchen, at the dented fridge I couldn't afford to replace, the walls badly in need of paint, the drafty windows that had stolen winter warmth for years because my home repair money went into someone else's castle. Effective immediately, I confirmed. Done. The transfer is canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with? No, I said, surprised at how good that word felt. That's everything. I hung up and sat in the stillness. Outside, December darkness was settling over North Crest. Christmas lights twinkled in windows where families gathered without judgment, without conditions, without having to pretend they belonged. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget would balance. For the first time since Laura's death, I could fix the porch light, buy real groceries, maybe even take a short trip somewhere warm. I gathered the bank statements, mortgage papers, all the proof of my generosity, and walked them to the fireplace. One match, and 5 years of quiet martyrdom curled into ash. The fire's heat touched my face, warmer than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed, probably Daniel with a half-hearted apology, or Camille needing cash for something urgent, like new table linens. I ignored it. Instead, I reached for the good whiskey, the one I'd been saving for an occasion that never came. Tonight was occasion enough. I raised my glass to the empty room, to Laura's photo on the mantel, to the man I had been, and the man I was becoming. Merry Christmas to me, I said, and meant it. Part 5. Camille's Provocation. The next morning broke crisp and clear, sunlight streaming through my kitchen window as I nursed a second cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I wasn't mentally counting down to the 15th, dreading the disappearing act in my bank account. Freedom tasted better than the Colombian roast I'd finally let myself buy. At exactly 10:47 a.m., my phone rang. Camille's name lit the screen like a warning flare. "Richard," she began, her voice edged with barely disguised impatience. "I need you to pick up my parents from the airport. Their flight from Portland arrives at 2. I set my mug down carefully, watching the steam curl upward. "Did you forget about our conversation yesterday? Look, whatever that was about, we need to focus on practical matters now. My parents need transportation, and you're the only one with free time." The audacity was staggering. Less than 24 hours after telling me I wasn't worthy of sitting at her family's Christmas table, she expected me to play chauffeur. "And you're asking me because..." Because that's what family does, Richard. They help each other. Her tone sharpened. Besides, let's be honest, you're not my rival. You're too soft to be my rival. So just get in your truck and pick them up. There it was, the final insult wrapped in a command. What airline? I asked quietly. Alaska Air, Flight 447, baggage claim Carousel 3, and Richard, they're expecting someone who can handle their luggage properly. Don't embarrass us. I could hear her nails tapping on something hard, probably the granite countertop I'd paid for when she decided laminate was unacceptable for her dinner parties. Of course, I said evenly. I'll take care of everything. Good. And wear something decent. Maybe that blue shirt from Daniel's graduation. They notice things like that. The line went dead. No, thank you. I leaned back, staring at my phone's blank screen. Flight 447, Carousel 3. I checked the clock. 10:52. Plenty of time. I poured another cup of coffee, added an extra spoon of sugar, and opened yesterday's crossword puzzle. 7 across, delayed gratification, 12 letters. The answer would come to me eventually. Part 6. The Airport Trap. At 2:15 p.m., I was sinking into my favorite armchair with a fresh cup of Earl Grey and the Sunday edition of the North Crest Gazette. Yesterday's crossword sat completed on the coffee table. Delayed gratification. Postponement. My phone buzzed against the wooden coffee table. Camille's name flashed on the screen again. I let it ring. The December sun slanted through my living room windows, warming the space where I'd spent so many lonely evenings counting the cost of my misplaced generosity. But today, the silence felt different, deliberate, earned. 2:47 p.m. The phone buzzed again. This time I caught the preview of her text. Dad, where are you? My parents are... I turned the phone face down and went back to the sports section. The Mariners had lost again. Some things never changed. By 3:30, my phone had rung 6 times. In that time, I'd finished the newspaper, brewed a second pot of tea, and started organizing the junk drawer in my kitchen. Amazing what you could accomplish when you weren't racing around serving people who saw you as their personal errand boy. The 7th call came at 3:45. This time, it wasn't Camille's name. It was a number I recognized from their circle, probably her parents borrowing someone's phone at the airport. I let that one ring too. Outside, my neighbor was hanging Christmas lights on his porch. His kids ran across the yard, their laughter bouncing through the cold air, the kind of manic joy only a December afternoon can bring. A normal family, doing normal things. No one stranded, no one waiting for someone who would never arrive. 4:15 p.m. My phone lit up again. Camille, then the unknown number, then Camille again. The buzzing became constant, like an angry hornet trapped against glass. I walked into the kitchen, unplugged my landline from the wall, then turned my cell phone off completely. Perfect silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated a mug of tomato soup. Simple comfort food I hadn't indulged in for months because every grocery dollar had been diverted into propping up their lifestyle. The cheese melted into perfect golden layers. The soup sent up curls of steam from my favorite mug. Outside, the winter sun dipped lower, stretching shadows across my backyard. Somewhere across town, 3 people were probably standing in an airport parking garage, arguing over taxi fares, wondering how their reliable driver had dared to strand them. The thought made the soup taste even better. By 5:00 p.m., I'd eaten, loaded the dishwasher, and was considering what movie to watch. It had been years since I'd had an entire evening to myself. No last-minute requests for money, no emergency errands disguised as family obligations. I was reaching for the remote when pounding shook my front door. Not a knock, pounding. The kind that rattles the frame and broadcasts pure fury. I set down my tea and walked toward it slowly, already knowing exactly who I'd see. The pounding grew sharper, faster, each blow more aggressive than the last. Through the peephole, I saw 3 figures packed onto my small porch like wolves crowding a kill. I opened the door to find Cody Jensen's red face inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he barked, barging past me into the living room without so much as an invitation. His wife, Catherine, followed, her hair slightly mussed, lips pressed into a razor-thin line. This is absolutely unacceptable behavior for someone your age, Richard. Barbaric. Camille came in last, her designer coat wrinkled, her makeup smudged. You humiliated us. Do you have any idea what you've done? My parents had to take a $40 taxi because you decided to get out of my house. My voice sliced through their overlapping outrage like a blade. They stopped mid-rant, stunned by the steel in my tone. Excuse me? Cody's face darkened from red to purple. You don't get to make demands here, pal. Not after what you pulled today. This is my house, I said quietly, not moving from my spot by the door. And I want you out. Now. Catherine stepped forward, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension that only comes from decades of looking down at people. Richard, you clearly don't understand the magnitude of your mistake. My husband has connections in this city. Business, social, political. You can't treat people like us this way and expect— This was a lesson, I interrupted, locking eyes with her. A lesson about your arrogance, your entitlement, and how you treat people you think are beneath you. Camille's jaw dropped. A lesson? Who do you think you are to teach anyone anything? You're nobody. I'm someone who stopped being your personal ATM and chauffeur. I stepped aside, opening the door wider. Lesson's over. You can leave. Cody jabbed a finger toward my chest but hesitated to actually touch me. You have no idea who you're dealing with, old man. I've been in this town longer than you've been breathing. I know people who can make your life very, very difficult. Is that a threat, Mr. Jensen? It's a promise. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous growl. You think abandoning elderly people at an airport is just something you can do without consequences? You're about to learn how wrong you are. Catherine's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Indeed. Actions have consequences, Richard, and yours will be public. Daddy, let's just go, Camille muttered, tugging her father's arm. This man isn't worth it. They filed out like a retreating army, but Cody paused in the doorway. You'll regret this, he said. I guarantee it. I closed the door behind them and slid the deadbolt home with a satisfying click. Through the window, I watched them pile into their rental car, still arguing as they drove off into the December dark. The house felt cleaner without them, as if their presence had left a film that was finally gone. But their parting words clung to the air: public consequences, connections, important people. I picked up my tea, still warm, and sat back down. For the first time in this entire mess, a flicker of concern crossed my mind. But it was quickly eclipsed by something stronger: anticipation. 3 days later, I was halfway through my morning coffee when I saw it, my own face staring up at me from page 3 of the Northcrest Chronicle. The headline read, Local Businessman Abandons Elderly Couple at Airport During Holiday Storm. My hands stilled on the mug. There I was in black and white, an old photo from my company's website, at least 5 years outdated. Below, the article made my blood run cold and my temper flare in equal measure. Cody and Catherine Jensen, visiting their daughter for Christmas, were stranded at Northcrest Regional Airport for over 4 hours Sunday when family member Richard Ramirez failed to appear for a prearranged pickup. The couple, both in their late 50s, waited in frigid temperatures as a winter storm warning was issued for the region. Winter storm warning. It had been 52 degrees and sunny. We couldn't believe someone would just abandon us like that, Cody was quoted. We called repeatedly, but Mr. Ramirez never answered. We were forced to take an expensive taxi in dangerous conditions. At our age, this kind of treatment isn't just inconsiderate, it's dangerous. The article went on to detail my supposed pattern of erratic behavior and concerning mental state. Cody had painted himself and Catherine as helpless victims of a cruel old man who had inexplicably snapped. No mention of the Christmas rejection, no context for Camille's demands or the years of financial bleeding. Just me, the villain who left elderly tourists to fend for themselves in a blizzard that never happened. I set down my mug and read the article again. Then again. The byline belonged to Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor. I didn't know the name, but I knew the tactic. Cody had called in favors, leaned on his banking connections, and placed this story exactly where it would inflict the most damage. I had to hand it to him. Smart. Very smart. For the first time since this began, I felt a grudging respect. These weren't just spoiled egotists, they were calculated. They understood that in a small city like North Crest, reputation was currency. One well-placed article could ruin a lifetime of work. They'd just declared war. I folded the paper neatly and set it aside. My mind shifted into the focused, methodical mode that had built my business from nothing. This wasn't about an airport pickup anymore. It wasn't even about Christmas dinner or mortgage payments. This was about winning. I opened my laptop and started typing names into the search bar. Cody Jensen, Catherine Jensen, Camille Jensen, their social media accounts, public records, connections, habits, everything they'd carelessly left out in the open over the years. If they wanted to play chess, I'd show them what a real strategist looked like. I glanced at the wall calendar. December 18th, 7 days until Christmas. 7 days to plan something they'd never forget. For the next 3 days, I lived in another world. Not the one where I was Richard Ramirez, the old man they thought they could walk over. This was the world where I was Richard Ramirez, entrepreneur, tactician, builder, someone who had clawed his way up from nothing and wasn't about to let entitled parasites dismantle 40 years of work. My laptop became command central, browser tabs filled with profiles, posts, and breadcrumbs of information spread out before me like pieces on a board in the highest stakes game I'd ever played. Cody Jensen, retired First National Bank manager, member of the North Crest Country Club, treasurer of the Inland Business Leaders Association. A man who'd spent his life in positions of trust and influence. A man with a lot to lose. Catherine's Instagram told its own story. A polished feed of charity luncheons, wine tastings, and vacation snapshots from Coeur d'Alene, tagged with Padre Blessed Life. Every post meticulously curated to project refinement and success. Comments from friends applauding her taste and inspirational lifestyle. All of it built on other people's money, including mine. Camille's Facebook was more revealing. Posts bragging about our beautiful home with glossy shots of the kitchen I'd paid for. Check-ins at high-end restaurants in months I'd covered their utility bills. And one status from just last week, so excited for Christmas dinner with family. Can't wait to show off our hosting skills, our home, our success. The arrogance was staggering, but it was Daniel's LinkedIn that handed me the final piece. His recent activity showed a brand new connection. Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor at the North Crest Chronicle, the same Patricia Morrison who'd penned the hit piece on me. I leaned back in my chair, scanning the evidence on my screen. They'd made 3 critical mistakes. First, they'd underestimated me completely. Second, they'd gone public with their attack, which meant I could go public with my response. Third, they'd documented their entire privileged existence online, creating a perfect catalog of hypocrisy. I clicked open Patricia Morrison's profile. 43 years old, journalism degree from WSU, 15 years at local papers, no background in banking or finance, which meant Cody had reached out cold, probably through one of his old business connections. A quick search through local business directories confirmed my suspicion. 3 mutual contacts between Cody and Patricia's editor. This story hadn't just appeared. It had been planted, carefully and deliberately. Amateur work. I opened a new document and started typing. Not a rebuttal to their smear campaign, something far better. A timeline. 5 years of financial support documented with bank statements, receipts, and canceled checks. The down payment for their house, $47,000 from my home equity loan. The kitchen renovation when Camille decided granite countertops were essential, $18,000 on my credit card. 60 mortgage payments at $2,800 each, $168,000 and counting. $250,000 more than I'd spent on myself in a decade. My phone buzzed, a text from an unfamiliar number, probably Camille trying a different angle. I ignored it. By nightfall, everything was organized into a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Bank statements, receipts, photos from their own social media flaunting purchases I'd funded, and a printed copy of the newspaper article, my red ink notes in the margins calling out each lie. I glanced at my wall calendar. December 24th was circled in red, not for Christmas, but because it was the perfect day for justice. According to Camille's Facebook events, they were hosting Christmas dinner for 12 guests, family, friends, neighbors, people in their social circle. The kind who read the Northcrest Chronicle and form opinions from what they see there. The kind who deserve to know the truth. I closed my laptop and walked into the kitchen where my good camera sat, the one I'd bought years ago to document construction sites. Tonight, it would capture something far more satisfying. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow, Cody Jensen and his family would learn what happens when you declare war on someone who actually knows how to fight. Christmas Eve. The morning dawned gray and cold, the kind of Northcrest winter day that made you grateful for heat and family gatherings. Too bad I wasn't welcome at either. But I had other plans. I laid out my evidence like a lawyer prepping for trial. Bank statements arranged by year, each monthly payment highlighted in yellow. Receipts ordered chronologically to show the steady drip of my financial support. Printed photos from their social feeds, Camille's new jewelry, their vacation snapshots, the expensive Christmas decor now hanging in their house. I made 12 identical packets, one for each dinner guest. On top of each stack went the Chronicle article, my red pen notes clearly visible. Lie scrawled next to Cody's weather warning. False beside his claim about my erratic behavior, with a note pointing out the 5 years of documented financial support they conveniently omitted. I dressed carefully, my best navy suit, the one I'd worn to Laura's funeral, pressed and ready for another kind of goodbye. This was a farewell to the man who'd been their doormat. Tonight, I would be someone they couldn't dismiss. At 6:30 p.m., I loaded the briefcase with the evidence packets and drove to Kendall Heights. Their house glowed with golden light, cars crammed into the driveway and spilling down the street. Through the dining room window, I could see silhouettes shifting around a long table. Camille played the gracious hostess in a home my money had bought. I parked across the street and checked my watch. 6:45. Perfect timing. Late enough that they'd be mid-meal, early enough to keep anyone from making a quick exit. The front door was unlocked, of course. Camille loved to boast about how safe their neighborhood was. No need for locks, as if she lived above the world's troubles. I stepped inside, the warmth hitting my face, along with the hum of conversation and the clink of cutlery. From the dining room, Catherine's voice rang out. "But darling, that's not how we do things in our family," followed by laughter. Our family. After everything they'd done to cut me out. I walked in, briefcase in hand. 12 faces turned toward me, expressions shifting from confusion to outright shock. Camille froze mid-sip of wine. Daniel's face drained of color. Cody and Catherine looked like they'd seen a ghost. "Good evening, everyone," I said evenly, setting my briefcase on their marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind me joining your Christmas celebration." Camille found her voice first. "Richard, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave, now." "Actually," I said, opening the briefcase and pulling out the first packet, "I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, this house, and the lifestyle you've been parading around." A woman I didn't recognize, probably one of Catherine's charity friends, leaned forward, curiosity in her eyes. "What is he talking about?" "Camille, he's having some kind of episode," she said quickly. "Daniel, call someone." But I was already circling the table, placing a packet of documents in front of each guest. "Here are the bank records," I said in an even conversational tone. 5 years of financial support, $168,000 in mortgage payments alone, plus the down payment, renovations, furniture, appliances, everything you see around you. The room went still, save for the soft rustle of papers, as 12 sets of hands began flipping through them. I watched faces shift, curiosity giving way to shock as the numbers and dates told their story. "This is," one man began, then stopped, staring at a bank statement. "Outrageous," finished the woman across from him. "Camille, why didn't you tell us any of this?" Her perfect composure was starting to fracture. "It's more complicated than it looks. Richard volunteered to help us. We never asked." "Actually," I said, pulling a folded newspaper article from my briefcase, "let's talk about what you did ask for, and what you told the media about me." It was as if the air in the room dropped 10 degrees. I slid copies of the article onto the table, watching recognition bloom as the guests spotted my face from the unflattering story printed 3 days earlier. "Now," I said, my voice carrying clearly over the silence, "let's discuss the real manipulators in this family." Cody's skin had gone from ruddy to pale. Catherine sat frozen, her wineglass hanging forgotten from her hand. "Mr. Jensen here," I continued, tapping the article, "used his banking connections to plant this story. Notice how I'm painted as unstable, dangerous, abandoning poor elderly people in freezing weather." A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up. "Cody, what is this about?" "The weather was 52 degrees and sunny," I said before Cody could answer. "And they weren't stranded tourists. They were Camille's parents, coming to the Christmas dinner I'd been banned from because I wasn't good enough for their company." Catherine finally spoke, her words faltering. "That's not... We never said..." "You never said what, Catherine?" I pulled my phone from my pocket, opening screenshots of Camille's social media posts. "That I was too low class for your parents? That my food and my working-class background would embarrass you in front of your educated friends?" The charity friend shifted in her seat. "Catherine, surely you didn't..." "He's twisting everything," Cody snapped, but the bite in his voice was gone. "This man has serious mental health issues. The stress of aging, financial strain..." "Financial strain?" I almost laughed. "Mr. Jensen, I've been supporting your daughter and son-in-law for nearly $3,000 a month for 5 years. The only financial problems here are the ones you're about to have." I turned to address the whole table. "These people have taken more than $200,000 from me while calling me names behind my back. They've manipulated my son against me, barred me from family gatherings, and when I finally stood my ground, they tried to destroy my reputation in the press." Daniel's voice came out low, uncertain. "Dad, I didn't know about the newspaper." "Your wife knew," I said flatly. "And her parents orchestrated it. They made me into a villain because I refused to be their personal bank account and chauffeur." The shift in the room was palpable. Guests glancing at one another, their expressions changing from polite neutrality to something sharper. "This is disgraceful," said an elderly woman in pearls, glaring at the bank statements. "Cody, how could you let your daughter exploit this man's generosity, then smear him when he stopped?" Cody's carefully managed smile cracked. "You don't understand the whole..." "I understand perfectly," the woman cut in. "He's been paying your bills while you've treated him like a servant, and when he said no, you tried to ruin him." Catherine's voice rose, brittle. "He abandoned us at the airport." "After you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner," I said evenly, "because you thought my presence would embarrass you. After 5 years of covering your bills while you looked down on me for my heritage and education." Silence settled heavy over the table. 12 people staring at Cody and Catherine with a mix of disbelief and disgust. Camille tried one last time to steer the moment. "Everyone, please, this is a family matter that's gotten out of hand." "No," I said, my voice firm. "It stopped being a family matter the second you made it public, when you took it to the newspaper, when you decided my reputation was worth sacrificing for your pride." I let my gaze move around the table, faces I didn't know, but who now knew me better than they knew their hosts. "I wanted you all to hear the truth before you read about Richard Ramirez in the paper again, because you will read about me again, but next time, it'll be the real story." I closed my briefcase and straightened my tie. "Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's the last one I'll be paying for." I walked toward the door. Behind me, the murmurs swelled, voices demanding answers, accusing, disbelieving. The sound of a carefully crafted image cracking apart. It was the sweetest Christmas music I'd ever heard. Proceedings on the house I had once helped them buy were now in motion. I placed the letter aside and returned to my coffee, reading it the way you might glance at a news report about a storm on the other side of the country. Interesting, but no longer your concern. My phone had been buzzing for weeks with increasingly frantic calls. Isabella's number was blocked after her first tearful, borderline hysterical voicemail. Cody and Catherine, whose once polished reputation in Spokane had dissolved like frost in morning sunlight after their Christmas dinner disgrace, had tried their luck too. Even Michael had been calling, his voice messages sitting unanswered, as I waited, part in anger, part in curiosity, to see how long it would take for his pride to finally crack. The answer turned out to be exactly 97 days. He appeared on my doorstep that Thursday evening, stripped of the confident posture he'd once worn like armor. Instead, he looked as though the last 3 months had aged him a decade. The skin under his eyes was dark and sunken, his tailored suit rumpled, and there was a sharp scent of desperation clinging to him like cheap cologne. "Dad," he said when I opened the door, "we need to talk." I stepped aside and let him in, noticing how his eyes roamed over my home as if seeing it for the first time. The new furniture bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck, the fresh coat of paint on walls that had been neglected for nearly 8 years, back when every extra dollar went to propping up his lifestyle. There were the small but satisfying repairs I'd finally been able to afford now that I wasn't financing someone else's version of the American dream. "Nice place," he murmured. "It's what happens when you start spending your money on yourself instead of on people who only take," I replied evenly, easing into my new recliner. "Coffee?" He shook his head, settling on the edge of the couch as though afraid to make himself comfortable. "Dad, I need you to know how sorry I am for everything. Christmas dinner, the newspaper article, the way Isabella, the way we treated you." "Go on," I said. "I didn't know Cody had planted that story. I swear I didn't. When I found out," he raked his hands through his hair. "God, Dad, the things they said about you behind your back, the way they talked about our family, about Mom's memory." My jaw tightened at Maria's name, but I kept my tone calm. "And what exactly did they say about your mother?" "That she knew her place better than you knew yours, that she understood boundaries." His eyes dropped to the floor. "You should have defended me. You should have stood up to them years ago." "I know," he said quietly. "You're right." The silence between us grew heavy, thick with the weight of 5 years' worth of mistakes. Outside, I could hear a neighbor mowing his lawn, the normal sounds of a normal Thursday evening in a normal neighborhood, the kind where sons didn't banish their fathers from Christmas dinner. "The house is in foreclosure," Michael said at last. "I'm aware. We can't make the payments without—" He stopped himself, realizing how it sounded. "Without my help," I finished for him. "Without the money I sent every month while you let your wife's family treat me like dirt." He swallowed hard. "I know how it looks, Dad." I leaned forward so there was no mistaking my point. "Do you know how much money I sent you over those years?" He nodded, defeated. Isabella calculated it after Christmas. Between the mortgage payments, the down payment, everything else, over $200,000. $237,468, I corrected. "I know the exact figure because I finally did what I should have done years ago, added it all up." His face crumpled. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it, son. The money's gone. But worse than that, the years are gone. Years when I could have been building a relationship with you instead of bankrolling your wife's fantasy life." He was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I know that now. But maybe we could start over. Maybe we could—" "Are you asking me to resume the mortgage payments?" The brief spark of hope in his eyes faded. "We're going to lose everything, Dad. The house, Isabella's respect for me, her parents' approval. I don't know what I'll do." "You'll figure it out," I said, not unkindly. "The same way I figured out how to live without a son who respected me. The same way I learned to spend Christmas alone while you celebrated with people who thought I was beneath them." Tears slid down his face, quiet, weary tears of a man who'd run out of bargaining chips. "I lost you, didn't I? I chose them over you, and now I've lost you for good." I studied him for a long moment, the son I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for, who had allowed his wife's family to convince him that his father wasn't worthy of their table. "No, Michael," I said finally. "You didn't lose me. You gave me away. There's a difference." He wiped at his eyes. Is there any way you could forgive me?" "I forgave you months ago," I told him, and I meant it. "But forgiveness isn't the same as pretending it never happened. It doesn't mean going back to the way things were. and it certainly doesn't mean funding a lifestyle that required me to be grateful for crumbs of your attention." "Then what does it mean?" he asked. I stood and walked over to the mantel where Maria's photo sat beside a new one, me, with Rosa and her family at Easter dinner. The first holiday I'd spent with people who genuinely wanted me there. "It means that if you want a relationship with me, you'll have to rebuild it from the ground up. It means showing respect instead of expecting me to earn it. It means making choices based on what's right, not what's easy. And it means that the next time someone, your wife, her parents, anyone, tries to exclude me from family gatherings, you'll remember who actually treats me like family." He nodded slowly, understanding dawning at last that respect wasn't automatic. It was earned and nurtured. "The house?" he asked quietly. "That's not my problem anymore, is it?" I sat back down, feeling lighter than I had in years. "You're a grown man, Michael. Handle it like one. Get a job that covers your bills. Sell the house and buy something you can afford. Stop living beyond your means and expecting others to carry you." He straightened his shoulders, maybe for the first time since he'd arrived. "You're right about all of it." "I know," I said simply. He reached the door, then turned back. "Dad, for what it's worth, seeing you stand up for yourself at Christmas, I was proud of you, angry, embarrassed, but proud." "Good," I said with a faint smile. "Maybe there's still hope for you." After he left, I poured myself a glass of my best whiskey and stepped onto the back porch. Spring was arriving in Spokane, the trees beginning to bud, the air carrying that subtle promise of warmer days ahead. In 4 months, I'd turned 63. Maria had been gone 8 years, and I had wasted 5 of those years being a doormat for people who didn't value sacrifice. I wasn't about to waste any more. My phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. "Dinner Sunday. The kids want to show you their school projects." I smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." Because real family, I'd learned, was made of people who were glad you were there, not those who treated you as a convenience. Everything else was just expensive theater, and I was done paying for tickets to shows where I wasn't even welcome on stage. The whiskey tasted like freedom, and the future looked exactly as bright as I was willing to make it. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. And when you're ready for the next chapter, just click the box on the left.